Abner?
Thank you.
What the...
We are talking the found footage anthology movie Project EERIE, written and directed by Umberger. And this is a low budget movie which has 3 short stories and a wraparound. So briefly, the wraparound features these 2 young brothers as they are wondering what to do for Halloween. They decide, as you do, to break into an abandoned government facility, and whilst there they found some classified documents and a kind of a DVD, so they end up stealing all this, watching the DVD at home, and this contains these found footage kind of short stories which are meant to be effectively like paranormal investigations that the government is looking into. The short stories basically start with this particular one, which was my favourite, I think, where we have this father and a young daughter going kind of camping in the woods somewhere, and it seems to be somewhat abandoned, all apart from one strange park ranger who is acting a little peculiar, you might say. And the father is kind of a little bit perturbed by this strange kind of park ranger who seems to be a little bit off kilter. But they decide to go to the beach, which is actually cordoned off, but they're going to go anyway. And the father discovers that there's actually a body of this woman on the beach, and obviously a little bit kind of concerned about that, as she probably would be, goes and finds the park ranger, who seems to be acting rather sinister. Now, that might sound like it's a kind of somewhat obvious kind of murder story, but there is actually a paranormal twist to it, which I won't spoil for you because that's the best thing in the movie. In that particular one, I gotta say, I like this one. I thought the setup was interesting. I thought the acting was solid. Our main guy seems genuinely like a kind of caring dad. In actual fact, I wonder if this actually was a real life father and daughter, because the daughter just seems to be very naturally kind of like reacting to this guy, like she genuinely is. Father-daughter relationship there. She seems quite young to be an actor. So, but it works well with the kind of the story. This park ranger, even when we first see him, he's even looks a little weird, but you can't quite put your finger on it. He's obviously kind of wearing like a silicone mask or something like that to make him look a little strange. But the ending, I think, is strong, and it leaves you like, oh my god, what's going on here? And it's one of these films where I don't think it really explains necessarily a hell of a lot, but when you watch this, I think one of the benefits, I think, of having a found footage movie is that, you're not really expected to show you everything and give you everything, because you're only glimpsing a small portion of what's going on, i.e. what this camera's kind of picked up. But it gives you enough, I think, to be intrigued about the consequences, about what's going on and all of that. So that I kind of quite liked. You might say there's a little bit kind of nothing really happened until the end, but I thought the setup was strong. It had a creepy vibe to it. I thought the acting was good, and it ended off with a bang. So that to me was somewhat of a winner. The second movie, it was, in my opinion, the weakest, and this basically follows these two like good old boy kind of hunters, and basically there's a kind of like a guy on the run who's accused of killing his wife and daughter, and he's in their kind of area, so they decide to go and track him down and end up finding him. But they also discover there's a crashed kind of satellite or kind of like pod from a astronaut vehicle, and an astronaut walking around, but this astronaut is a little bit different to what you might think. There is a more overt kind of VFX in this one, which I think doesn't look particularly good. I mean, you don't see loads of it, but it's a little, obviously just a rubber mask, but it seemed a little bit discombobulated in its kind of story. I mean, the whole there is a through line about why this guy's on the run and how it connects to everything. But I don't know, the actual through narrative for me was a little on the weaker side. It didn't seem to, really, it seemed kind of pointless to me. The whole guy on the run situation didn't really have any relevance to the actual kind of the bulk of the story, if that makes sense. It just seemed like a distraction, to be honest with you. I also think the acting, although not bad, wasn't as strong maybe as the rest of this kind of movie, which overall was pretty strong, I would say. So the story just seemed a little kind of, for where it went, it ended up being a little cheesy, I thought. And, you know, it had pointless elements to it, to be honest with you. But it's still a relatively kind of jumpy kind of found footage movie with probably the most, as I say, the most you'll see in regards to actual kind of stuff on screen. The third one is effectively a haunted house movie. The twist here is it's taken place in this Amish household, where we have this Amish couple who have contacted these paranormal investigators. I don't know how they've done that, considering they're Amish, but whatever. Anyway, and these two guys, these paranormal investigators, are asked to kind of spend the night in this house because it's full of kind of paranormal activity. And as we go in there, it starts off a little slow, you know, things don't seem to be all that kind of reactive, but things escalate pretty quickly, and we learn that there's actually probably a much darker reason for everything that's kind of going on. There's a little bit of like, kind of like badly kind of put together sequences. There's like a female, let's call it entity, that doesn't really look all that good. It looks like just someone with a wig walking around, to be honest. But there are a couple of good elements too, particularly in regards to this kind of Amish character who I thought, you know, had some kind of creepy moments. It genuinely feels quite, you know, you're quite secluded in the woods. This house looks pretty good. And there are some kind of spooky stuff and probably a little bit more jump scares and things like that. It's a fairly okay kind of haunted house kind of story, like a mini story. To be fair, I think the three short stories, none of them are bad. I really enjoyed the first one. The second one was still watchable, although I think it was, you know, somewhat kind of silly. And the third one, outside of a little bit of kind of like poorly put together scare sequences, it still is quite an effective kind of horror, haunted house kind of film. The wraparound story, largely forgettable, I would say, but it's a fairly decent low-budget effort, I would say. It's hampered, I think, by a little bit of maybe lower budget, maybe a quick kind of turnaround on the kind of like the shooting schedule and stuff. Could have been a little kind of sharper, could have been a little bit more professional looking at times, but overall, you know, it's a fairly effective anthology film, and I'm not a huge fan of anthology films because always where you can never really get a huge amount of characterization, but I guess it's because it's only really 3 stories, you get a really reasonable amount. So I'll actually give this one an above average score of a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.